Good tidings, ladies and gentlemen of the lodge, and welcome back. Today we are serving up yet another Kingdom Hearts video where we will not only be talking about the future Kingdom Hearts 4, but looking back on Kingdom Hearts 3 as well. I am joined by my good friend and legend, Lands of Masters, as we will both be sharing our suspicions of the Kingdom Hearts 3 secret episode now that we have a little bit more context with the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer. Anyway, Lands, how we doing today, man?
I'm doing good, Landy. How are you, King?
I'm doing real well, man. As you know, always a pleasure having you in the lodge, my dude. I'm excited to talk about this topic today because we're both coming from different perspectives, and so to lay it out to you, the viewer, I believe the secret episode takes place after the events of Kingdom Hearts 4, while you, Lands, don't seem to think so.
Yes, so I believe the secret episode is solely Yozoa's dream that may or may not be real, that takes place after KH3 and before Melody of Memory.
So let's get this started. There's no talking about the secret episode without first talking about the secret movie. So, just to make things clear, the secret movie is that scene where Sora and Riku sort of wake up in Quadratum at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, where the secret episode is the clash between Sora and Yozora that took place in Remind. Now, historically speaking, when we look at the secret movies of, say, Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, they're usually foreshadowing or they give you an inside look to the end game of one of the following titles. On one hand, you have the fight between Riku and Roxas, which later took place. On another hand, you have the Birth by Sleep Keyblade Graveyard endgame, which ended up later taking place. That trend of the secret movie taking place at the end of a following title, I'm inclined to believe that that trend is going to continue. Now, why would that bear any significance as to when chronologically the secret episode takes place? That's going to take us over to our main man Sora and the way he looks. I'll get into this more later, but for starters, let's take note that both in the secret episode and the secret movie, Sora is in his more fantasy style looking getup. Whereas when we see the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailers, Sora doesn't quite look like that. Additionally, this would also give us an explanation as to why this fantasy style Sora looks older than the fantasy style Sora of the base game of Kingdom Hearts 3. Perhaps maybe a year's time has passed and he looks a little older, which again, as we remember, we had a 1-year time skip in Melody of Memory. So if we are to believe this trend of the secret movie taking place in the end game of a following title, then we are to conclude that by the end of Kingdom Hearts 4, Sora will be reverting back to his more fantasy-style form. And seeing as that is the form he is in when he fights Yozora, I'm led to believe that this scene is going to take place as Sora is trying to cross back into reality. And I'll get into that more in a minute, but for now, let's move on. Now, seeing as getting out of Quadratum and back to his reality is ultimately Sora's goal, it would make perfect sense if this is where we ended up in the endgame. So the last point I will make towards this taking place towards the end of Kingdom Hearts 4, as opposed to beforehand, is that when the battle with Yozora is over, Sora is back here in the final world, where the edges of sleep and death can overlap. I don't believe Sora stopped off in the final world before being transported to Quadratum. Rather, I believe after he faded at the end of KH3, he got a direct transport into Quadratum. What we see here in the secret episode is merely Sora making his way out of Quadratum and attempting to cross over between realms all over again. In fact, you could look at this Night Sky version of the final world as the final world of unreality, and upon his victory, he crosses over into the final world of reality. One last point about the final world is that yes, even though at the conclusion of their battle, whether Sora wins or loses, we see Yozora wake up in the back seat, seeing as the realms of sleep and death can sometimes overlap, Yozora making contact with Sora simply could be a consequence of Sora being in the final world, which I very well think that may be where we end up in the Kingdom Hearts 4 endgame. With that said, I now toss it over to you, Lance.
Thanks, Landy. So it's my belief that the secret episode is Yozoa's dreams. So we see this clearly evidenced when the conclusion of the fight leads to Yozoa awakening in the backseat. But let's take this evidence a step even further. Let's recall the secret episode has two outcomes. it can be assumed it's multiple dreams, but they actually occur in reverse order. You have the outcome where he loses and wakes up back in the car with a man who's highly believed to be Luxor's somebody. I also believe that this is the person who told Yazoa to save Sora. A common theory is the card Luxor gave to Sora is a type of tracking device, and that is how Yazoa was able to find him. How could Yazoa find Sora if he's not real, you might ask? There's not really an answer for that at the moment, but the biggest clue comes from the game's slogan. Don't assume your dreams are just fantasy. If you can imagine a world, believe in it, and dive in. I believe Yazoa saved Sora in KH3's bad ending in his dreams, and the apartment in the KH4 trailer is where he ended up. It's unknown what happened in between, but perhaps Yazoa left Sora in someone's care, Stelexia, during that time as part of the process of saving him.
Well, with all of that out of the way, folks, what do you think about where this scene takes place? Please drop it to the comments and let us know. But hey, Lance, thanks so much for doing this, man. Where can the people find and follow you?
You can find me at Lands of Masters on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. Thank you so much, Landy, for having me in the logs. It's been an absolute honor. Love and appreciate you, homie.
Love and appreciate you too, my dude. Always such a pleasure having you in the lodge. So you sickos and normies, be good out there, be good to each other and yourselves, and I will see all of you beautiful sickos and normies next time.